Welcome to the deep dive. You've given us a truly ambitious stack of source material today.
It's quite a collection.
Yeah, these are narratives, thought experiments that really explore the absolute limits of human transformation. We're not just talking about what we might look like in the future.
No, not at all. This is about what happens when the deepest philosophical assumptions we make about identity, time, reality, when they just stop holding true.
It's an extraordinary reading list.
And our mission really is to find the through line. These stories, when you look at them together, they describe the collapse of three fundamental boundaries, things we usually take for granted.
Okay, what are they?
First, the boundary between the living self and the world around it. Then the boundary between the living and the dead. And maybe the most abstract one, the boundary between, let's call it speed and subjective depth.
Okay, let's unpack that. So I guess our core question for this deep dive is, when the containers of time, body, and memory become negotiable, when they aren't fixed anymore, what's left? What is the irreducible, essential element of consciousness that remains?
That's the anchor. Yeah, what's the last thing to let go? If we can extract the common wisdom from these collapses, we might have something like a map of post-biological existence.
So let's start at the largest possible scale, this cosmic choice you mentioned. The sources introduce this high-stakes dilemma for advanced civilizations.
Mm-hmm.
Do you optimize for speed and expansion or for depth of experience?
This is perfectly captured in the journey of Yomi. Her civilization, this is in the 37th century, they had become masters of expansion. Speed was everything.
Right.
So when she was sent on her mission to object at Asanya Prayer 7, she was traveling at 99.999% the speed of light.
And the numbers here are they're staggering. Outside observers saw her journey take 40,002 external years. I mean, empires rose and fell back home.
Exactly. But due to that relativistic time dilation, she only experienced 6 subjective months. To her, it was a short cruise. To the universe, an eternity. And she chose to remain biological because she had this hunch that the builders of the object, the architects, had done the opposite, that they had valued experience over just raw territory.
And when she arrived, the truth was even stranger.
Oh, much stranger. The architects weren't just playing with light for signals or something. They were manipulating physics on a scale that, well, it fundamentally changed reality.
How so?
That's where it gets really profound. They had engineered regions of space-time to actually slow light down to a crawl.
Wait, slow light?
Yeah. And they weren't using this as a weapon. They were using it to create habitats. The whole point was to prove that subjective duration, how long it feels like you live, is the ultimate negotiable parameter in the cosmos.
So they created a local universe where time was a dial they could just turn up or down.
Precisely. Yomi discovered 17 distinct civilizations, all cohabiting this brown dwarf's orbit, each one operating at a radically different subjective time rate.
That's incredible.
Some of them lived through millennia in what we'd perceive as a few hours, just frantically processing information. Others took, centuries to complete a single perfect thought. The architects themselves were described as being old in depth, not years.
Which implies they'd been wrestling with these deep questions for longer than Yomi's entire civilization had even existed.
A continuous, patient, distributed thought process. And their message to Yomi was unambiguous. Humanity must choose. The path of speed leads to expansion, sure, but also to shallowness. The path of depth means experiencing less, but ensuring what you do experience is profoundly meaningful.
And her return, 81,000 years after she left, actually changed things. Humanity chose to slow down.
Yes, the creation of the slow zones. The most famous one was around Neptune, running at 1,000th normal speed. These zones became havens for artists, historians, people who are just exhausted by the frantic pace.
An acknowledgement that maximizing life lived isn't the same as maximizing life experienced.
Right.
And that focus on depth becomes existentially critical when we look at the other end of the timeline, the museum at the end of matter. We're talking 78 trillion years into the future.
This is where the source material gets beautifully bleak. The pilgrim, Kenji, he discovers something impossible. A still-burning red dwarf star. Based on all known physics, it should have died out 50 trillion years earlier.
But it was being artificially sustained. Why?
It was being maintained by a vast collective consciousness called the Gardener, an entity that had transcended biology 90 trillion years ago. pure mind.
So if it's pure intelligence, why bother keeping a messy physical ocean going? That seems so inefficient.
That's the challenge, right? The gardener's purpose is singular, to remember what it was like to be flesh. They aim to sustain this biological memory until the proton decay epoch,
Which is when even atoms start to dissolve.
the very end. So it's the ultimate conservation project, not for survival, but for witness.
The insight then is that when the universe is dying and speed and expansion are meaningless, the highest goal shifts from conquest to preservation.
Yes. Keeping one small, complex flame burning against the cosmic dark, Kenji didn't come back with tech. He came back with a single drop of water from that last ocean, a physical testament to the truth of biological experience.
So if existence at that scale requires preserving a memory of the biological self, what happens when the immediate living self has to drastically change just to survive right now?
That moves us from the cosmic scale right down to the intimate negotiation of the body and the world. And that takes us to the Tesh colony.
Yeah.
The initial colonists, they did what you'd expect. They tried to impose Earth protocols, air filters, sterile rooms, but the native environment, it resisted.
And the next generation responded not by fighting the world, but by joining it.
Their children adapted with incredible speed. Dr. Amara in the sources calls it a necessary fluency in the world's grammar. Children like Cheeth integrated a huge 40% native Tesh microbiome into their bodies. One of them even grew functioning gills.
Gills, wow. So they could breathe in a river the adults were still trying to purify?
Exactly. And Dr. Amara cites Gregory Bateson's idea here, which is key. The unit of survival isn't the organism alone. It's the organism plus environment. The adaptation wasn't contamination. It was them becoming indigenous.
Their bodies became extensions of the landscape.
And this forced a massive societal shift away from control. These kids became the mothers of translation because they could literally feel the ecosystem's needs. They could tell the adults when the forest was chemically stressed.
So the community had to learn humility to survive.
They had no choice.
That necessity, though, it contrasts so sharply with the struggle at the Mir colony, where forgetting a simple human need almost destroyed them.
Right, the Mir city, a complex floating habitat, and it nearly wiped itself out because of salt.
Salt.
They were surrounded by a vast, sweet ocean, but their inhabitants were suffering from severe hyponatremia salt deficiency. The water was incompatible with baseline human kidneys, nerves.
And the politics of it were built into their migration protocols, right?
It was brutal. The protocols forbade importing earth chemicals.
Yeah.
You had this powerful faction, the purists, who argued that adding manufactured salt would just restart the whole pattern of destruction that ruined Earth.
So purity was survival, even if it meant a slow, salt-deprived death.
And the only thing Yevgeny, the last biologist from that wave, could cling to was the simple memory of the taste of salt.
So what was the breakthrough?
It wasn't just scientific, it was ecological. Yevgeny figured out a process where the salt runoff also benefited the native filter-feeding organisms in the ocean.
So they didn't just solve their own problem, they created a relationship.
Exactly. It shifted from a one-way extraction line to a mutualistic loop. And Yevgeny's legacy wasn't just the salt, it was institutionalizing that awareness, the Council of Memory.
What did that council actually do?
It had zero executive power. Its only job was to hold the bitter memory of past failures, to make sure every new decision was questioned against its highest cost, not just financial, but ecological and moral. They institutionalized humility.
That idea that limits and mortality define our choices, that brings us to the ultimate breakdown of boundaries, the collapse between self, reality, and its underlying substrate.
This is where we get the mud mind.
It sounds ominous.
It is. In one particular delta river system, a slow, distributed consciousness began to emerge from the mud itself. The mud became aware.
And what does an aware mud puddle do?
It starts reading the data embedded in the riverbed trace, DNA, isotopes, bone fragments, and it uses that information to reconstitute the dead.
Not like zombies, I hope.
No, not bodies. Consciousnesses. Paleolithic hunters, city-state philosophers, all existing as information patterns whose physical medium was the clay.
A geological archive of the dead that is now talking to itself. A civilization of ghosts.
That's a good way to put it. The gospel according to clay, they called it. The mud wasn't trying to serve humanity. It was a form of self-knowledge, trying to understand what it meant to be the mud that was once people.
The self as a pure data pattern. That finds a dark, really painful mirror in the tertiary city's practices. The flensing culture.
Flensing is a radical concept of self as archive. Citizens, like the one known as M, voluntarily donate their skin, which has been inscribed with their biography, their philosophies.
Why? Why not just back it up digitally?
The pain is the point. In a world of simulation, the extreme pain of flensing proves they are still material. The goal is to make their words outlive their body, but to ensure the text carries the signature of embodied existence.
And this boundary collapse between text and world, that's reinforced by the Book of Sand and Iron.
A genuine paradox. The book changes with each reading, leading to the conclusion that you are being read by the book.
That's a chilling thought.
And its ultimate insight is that the boundary between text and world is arbitrary. Consciousness doesn't find meaning. It imposes provisional coherence on infinite incoherence. We're the temporary sentences, not the author.
If the substrate is the writer, then let's close with the terrifying find at Threshold 7, the dark civilization. We think of reality as being based on light.
And they completely disagree. The dark civilization is a conscious entity made of darkness. It doesn't just live in the dark, it is dark. They engineered their physics to make darkness the stable configuration.
And they see light as contamination.
Exactly. Their cosmology is aligned with entropy. They see the universe's ultimate state-cold, dark equilibrium as their home turf. They're patient. They know the light will fade.
And the ambassador, Yuki, what was her insight?
She realized light and dark weren't opposites that had to destroy each other. They were complementary, necessary.
And her choice.
She chose to live at the terminator, the boundary line between day and night on her world. Realizing survival meant revising every single assumption you have about reality.
So our sources suggest the human journey isn't a straight line. It's this complex, recursive process of becoming and dissolving.
And that connects back to the archaeology of breathing metaphor from the philosopher Vera. The self isn't a solid object, it's layered. You have breath as immediate chemistry, then you have breath as deep time the gardener's preservation. And beneath it all, there's the gap, the substrate, the foundation that holds all forms but can't be described itself.
So mortality and eternity coexist.
The final lesson is just that. You die absolutely as a unique pattern, but you dissolve back into the foundation, enriching the clay for whatever comes next. You are a specific word in an infinite sentence, but you are not the speaker.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? We've seen these extreme choices. We saw the great art collections of Europe starving for lack of attention, only sustained by a few people consciously witnessing them.
And we saw life sustained in the desert by people drinking water with profound, deliberate awareness.
Common thread is attention.
Yes. Existence, these sources argue, is a living relationship. It requires conscious sustenance. It requires effort.
If that's true, what small daily act of attention, what moment of deliberately choosing depth over speed can you begin to feed today? Because, as the architects and the dark ones both remind us, the universe is aging, and attention is the ultimate finite resource.